Welcome to the Transforming Trauma podcast. Transforming Trauma is presented by the NARM Training Institute. I'm your host, Emily Ruth, and I'm so glad you've joined us today. Hi, Transforming Trauma listeners. We're thrilled to share with you that the new NARM book will be available on Audiobook on November 8th, 2022. The Practical Guide for Healing Developmental Trauma, using the Neuro Affective Relational Model to address adverse childhood experiences and resolve complex trauma audiobook will be read by the authors, our very own NARM creator, Dr. Laurence Heller, and senior trainer, Brad Kammer. This book is designed to promote personal and collective change. The intention is to make NARM accessible for anyone working or dealing with complex trauma. Using therapeutic examples and helpful exercises, Brad and Larry demonstrate how NARM can serve as a catalyst to promote healing and post-traumatic growth. Whether you are a mental health or other helping professional, or simply interested in personal growth, we hope you will find this book useful in your professional work and personal healing. The Practical Guide for Healing Developmental Trauma book is now available on Amazon and other online book retailers, and the audiobook will be available to order November 8th on Audible and other audiobook services. Please visit www.narmtraining.com/books to stay up to date on the latest news. To celebrate the release of the new NARM audiobook, we will share in just a few moments a narration from Chapter 2 by author Brad Kammer. Please enjoy this excerpt from the Practical Guide for Healing Developmental Trauma, using the Neuro Affective Relational Model to address adverse childhood experiences and resolve complex trauma.
Emotional completion. The broader the range of emotions that a child experiences, the broader will be the emotional range of the self that develops. Joseph Ledoux. NARM is a therapeutic model heavily informed by attachment theory and interpersonal neurobiology. These psychological fields both focus on the neurobiological process of relational connection, particularly between children and their caregivers. The vehicle for relational connection is emotion. Humans are wired for emotional connection. Emotions shape our internal world. Emotions are the building blocks of the self. People who are able to stay connected to their emotions will be informed by the full spectrum of emotions. There are no good or bad emotions. Emotions such as anger, grief, and fear coexist with other emotions such as love, joy, and gratitude. A person's ability to experience a full range of emotions reflects their capacity for affect regulation and affect tolerance. Learning to disconnect from one's internal world, including one's needs and emotions, is a byproduct of complex trauma. Tragically, for children who experience early trauma, their capacity to experience a wide range of human emotions becomes disrupted. These individuals learn to run away from their emotions. Clients may not want or may feel unable to answer questions about their emotions. They are unable to stay connected to and be informed by their emotional responses. In fact, they often feel in conflict with their emotions and use various strategies to avoid or disconnect from their emotions. This process of repressing emotions may lead people to view emotions as either good or bad. Many clients will relate to their emotions as bad, representing a lifetime of pain, distress, and hopelessness. Seen from this perspective, they will do whatever they can to avoid negative emotions, including all sorts of acting in and acting out behaviors. With a limited ability to experience their full range of authentic emotions, these clients move through adulthood with significant deficits in affect regulation and affect tolerance. Most often, clients are not aware of what they truly feel. Most children are not raised in environments where there are modeled appropriate ways to reflect on and relate to their internal experience. As adults, they likely have ongoing challenges in reflecting on and relating to their internal experience. They may be aware of the symptoms that are causing distress, but in terms of what they truly feel, they're largely unaware. In fact, many people are using significant life energy fighting very hard to not feel their authentic emotions. The adaptive survival styles and their associated strategies reinforce patterns of disconnection as people distance themselves from their authentic emotions. The emotional completion process begins when people stop running from themselves and start psychobiologically owning their emotions. What follows is a basic introduction to the emotional completion model. In Chapter 7, we will provide more details about the emotional completion process. The first step in the NARM Emotional Completion Model is about supporting the possibility that clients can become increasingly present to their authentic emotions, what we refer to in NARM as primary emotions. As we support our clients to be present to their primary emotions, clients do not have to run from themselves and limit their lives in such extreme ways. Remember, clients are not just disconnected, they are also actively rejecting their internal states. This process of emotional repression, disconnection from, and rejection of one's primary emotions impacts how clients relate to themselves and those they are in relationship with, and it has profound implications on human functioning and well-being. Once our client is able to be present to a primary emotion, we invite reflection on the implicit intention in that emotion. There is an implicit intention in every emotion. Emotional responses serve as both messages to the environment and a message to the self. NARM therapists use the following questions to guide their inquiry. What message is the emotion attempting to convey? What is the underlying intention in this emotional response? What is the emotion trying to accomplish? For children, expressing emotion is a way of communicating to others about their basic needs. For adults, emotions reinforce connection to one's authentic self. Identifying the intention of one's emotion gives a context for understanding that the emotional response is in fact an empowering process, an attempt to communicate something genuine and important. This process serves as an antidote to child consciousness, where the client's belief is that their emotions are bad and that they deserve to be treated this way. As clients connect to the intention of their primary emotions, they embody a different emotional sense, that their emotions are valid and that they don't deserve to be treated this way. The emotional completion model uses adult consciousness to confront and transform these unresolved emotional dynamics left over from childhood trauma. This last clinical step of the emotional completion model is about how we support clients to be present to and contain the life energy inherent in the emotion. Completion does not imply that these emotions are finished or go away. In fact, it's quite the opposite. As clients are able to connect to their primary emotions and what they are trying to affect, emotional energy that has been bound up in old adaptive survival style patterns becomes available to fuel their life. This builds greater capacity for experiencing the full range of one's emotional world. Many psychotherapeutic models recognize the potential benefits of releasing trapped emotional energy and have focused on expression of emotions as a way to help relieve clients' distress. Earlier psychotherapeutic models were often quite cathartic, oriented toward discharging high arousal states of unexpressed emotion. What we have found is that if we explore emotions and encourage emotional expression without working with what is driving these emotional responses, it can lead to regression and disorganization. In NARM, we do not focus on discharge, abreaction, or cathartic expression. From our perspective, more emotionally cathartic approaches are good at helping clients express emotions, but not necessarily good at helping contain and integrate emotions. The NARM approach supports clients toward greater internal organization, which we are referring to here as a process of emotional containment. The process of supporting emotional containment often leads to greater access to one's life energy. clients may begin to experience an enhanced capacity for internal states of aliveness, pleasure, creativity, play, gratitude, compassion, and intimacy. As individuals reconnect to their heart and emotions, love for self and others becomes foundational. The emotional completion process is a central element in healing developmental trauma. As clients are able to stay present to their primary emotions, recognize the intention of these emotions, and integrate the life energy inherent in these emotional states, they are giving themselves what they never received. They are developing capacity for object constancy and earned secure attachment. No longer meeting the world from child consciousness, preoccupied with trying to get their developmental needs met, clients can come more fully into the present and become more deeply rooted in embodied adult consciousness. From this place of increased psychobiological capacity, core expressions of the life force that had been bound in survival strategies can now be used for more authentic, nurturing connection to self and others. Disidentification. Survival styles and their corresponding identifications are held together by unresolved affect. As clients build greater capacity to be present to, tolerate, and integrate unresolved affects through the process of emotional completion, their outdated identifications begin dissolving. The core dilemma between their survival need to protect the attachment relationship at the expense of their authentic self becomes less compelling as clients deepen into embodied adult consciousness. As identifications soften, this leads to an increasing sense of separation individuation, agency, and self-activation. We refer to this process as disidentification. The disidentification process facilitates increasing psychobiological capacity, which describes the way clients experience greater organization, increased resilience, and improved life functioning. Many clients have shared with us that they are surprised at how different they feel after NARM sessions. They report feeling stronger and more whole than they were before NARM therapy. While most clients expect symptom relief out of the therapeutic process, few expect to find such profound change. Clients are often not aware that their symptoms emerge from deeper patterns of identity, also referred to within psychology as personality or character. These symptoms are the surface expression of deeply held, largely unconscious patterns of disconnection, disorganization, and distortions of the self, viewed in NARM through the Adaptive Survival Styles framework. As psychologist Dr. Jonathan Shedler writes, the patient needs the clinician to grasp something psychologically systemic about who they are, not just what disorders they have, as meaningful and lasting change generally comes not from focusing on symptoms, but on the personality patterns that underlie them. In this way, using NARM to shift personality patterns shaped by the systemic impact of unresolved developmental trauma becomes an opportunity for profound healing, post-traumatic growth, and personal transformation. However, it is not always so easy. Real inner work threatens one's identity. The more a person invests in personal growth, the more they challenge what they have taken to be their identity and who they believe themselves to be. We cannot underestimate the survival power of identity. Identity develops out of one's most important attachment relationships, including family and culture. Therefore, people take their identities very seriously, life and death seriously. Even when adults are no longer fully emotionally dependent on others for their survival, as they start to challenge their identities, it often provokes a deeply held existential fear, the fear of relational loss. Without understanding the map that we have laid out in this chapter, it is easy for therapists to get lost in addressing the strategies and symptoms without directly addressing the underlying psychobiological patterns. In NARM, we view the various symptoms, strategies, and reactions that create distress as emerging from the underlying core dilemmas, survival style patterns, and identifications. Working with these deeper layers of identity, the psychologically systemic nature of one's suffering continually informs the NARM approach. The irony is that even though identity seems so solid when we are in it, it is actually not so solid at all. If it were so solid, we would not have to hold on to it so tightly. As clients begin to experience disidentification and realize the limitations of who they have taken themselves to be, change can happen more quickly than they may anticipate. While some people may experience initial resistance to shifting the relationship to self, as well as the relationship to their family and culture, they may be surprised to realize unexpected benefits. With disidentification often comes increasing freedom to connect with their families and cultures without their past feelings of unresolved anger, guilt, and hurt. The more connected they feel to their authentic self, the less they feel dependent on their families and cultures for their internal security, allowing them to enjoy their families and cultures in new and surprising ways. As internal conflicts quiet down and adaptive survival styles dissolve, individuals become less symptomatic. Clients often experience profound psychobiological shifts as the life energy used to bind identifications in the form of physiological patterns and symptoms become freed up. This often leads to states of expansion, spaciousness, lightness, fluidity, flow, and joy. Clients learn to play again, to laugh at themselves, and to experience pleasure and intimacy. They begin relating to themselves through increasing compassion. They develop greater capacity to face internal and external difficulties. As they embody a sense of increasing internal freedom, people begin experiencing themselves, their relationships, their history, and their life in a whole new way. The overall intention in NARM is to support the possibility of increasing internal freedom. Embodying adult consciousness provides the opportunity to become less and less dependent on the environment for one's inner well-being. This has to do with increasing freedom to trust in oneself. Instead of being caught in internal conflicts, their core dilemmas, people can move out into the world with greater confidence, ease, and flow. As the process of disidentification begins, however, the initial state a person experiences is not usually freedom. Often, the initial experience is a sense of emptiness or loneliness, which can be difficult to stay present with. The loneliness can harken back to early in life when children felt completely alone. This experience was associated with the terror of attachment loss. Most children never learned how to deal with the loss of connection. Instead, they just adapted in order to manage it. Even as adults, people use all sorts of strategies to avoid relational loss and the loneliness that they fear. Many people, therefore, will choose identifications and suffering over the experience of emptiness and loneliness. Loneliness can be experienced as both frightening and liberating. When in child consciousness, adults may still experience the loneliness as terrifying. These clients often rely on adaptive survival strategies to manage and limit their lives. When in adult consciousness, adults may experience the loneliness as relief, expansion, and increasing freedom. These clients often report an increased sense of internal space and depth in which to meet the world. We track cycles of connection, disconnection in the service of disidentification. As identifications dissolve, people often experience increasing states of connection, expansion, freedom, hope, strength, and aliveness. One way we resource our clients is to reflect to them when they are able to stay in states of connection for longer periods of time. As people experience greater internal organization, they feel less compelled by old strategies of disconnection. Instead of relying on adaptive survival strategies to control their lives, they experience increasing agency and choice. Self-acceptance, compassion, and kindness function as solvents for old identifications. The glue that binds the identifications is shame. When individuals push away and reject parts of themselves, they reinforce the shame. As individuals learn to accept their humanness and the complexity of being human on this planet, that's when change happens. Self-acceptance is not something a person can just tell themselves to do. It comes as their preoccupation with internal noise of the survival styles quiets down. Accessing deeper levels of self allows people to experience increasingly quiet places within themselves. People keep themselves preoccupied and busy so that there is no time for quiet connection with self. While people crave change and relief from their suffering, they also fear slowing down and reconnecting. NARM therapists seek to cultivate quiet within themselves even when client strategies are noisy and create distraction. This helps therapists not get lost in their client's reactivity. The less noise within ourselves, the more present we can be with our client, which enhances the intersubjective space. Although strategies of disconnection are strong for us all, we are never truly disconnected from what is most alive and authentic in ourselves. In adapting to developmental trauma, we lose awareness of that deep connection. As we work through our survival strategies, our old identifications, and other internal obstacles, we become increasingly aware of the deep sense of connection that has always been there. It is from this place we can experience a greater sense of aliveness and the possibility of ever-increasing internal freedom.
The practical guide for healing developmental trauma, using the Neuro Affective Relational Model to address adverse childhood experiences and resolve complex trauma audiobook is now available on Audible and other audiobook services. Please visit www.narmtraining.com/books to stay up to date on the latest news. Thanks to Andrea Klunder and the Creative Imposter Studios for producing and editing, to Tori Essex for our album art, and to Brad Kammer for the creation of this podcast. We look forward to building community, connection with you, and changing the world by transforming trauma.